Imagine a world where water is as precious as gold. In this scenario, every drop is scrutinized, measured, and traded, creating a society where scarcity reigns supreme. What would happen to our daily lives, our relationships, and our very sense of community? This thought experiment invites us to delve into the implications of finite resources and the pressing need for equitable distribution. Finite resources are those that cannot be replenished at the same rate they are consumed. Think of fossil fuels, fresh water, and arable land. Each is limited in quantity and essential for human survival. As these resources dwindle, the consequences of their scarcity ripple through society, leading to heightened competition, potential conflict, and a reevaluation of our values. Imagine neighborhoods where families hoard water supplies, leading to desperate confrontations over access. Picture communities fracturing as individuals prioritize their own needs over the common good. In such a world, fairness becomes a distant dream. The strange consequence is that scarcity fosters inequality. Those with wealth and power could manipulate access to resources, while the vulnerable are left to fend for themselves. This stark reality compels us to consider how we allocate what little we have left. The urgency of this situation raises profound questions. How do we ensure that resources are distributed justly? Who gets to decide what is fair? And how do we prevent corruption in the process? In a society where every resource is contested, the stakes are incredibly high. We are left to wonder, could technology, specifically smart contracts, offer a solution? These self-executing contracts could automate the distribution of resources based on preset conditions, minimizing human bias and error. But before we explore that avenue, we must grapple with the gravity of our current predicament. How do we manage finite resources equitably? The answer may well define the future of our society. As we contemplate this scenario, let it sink in that the path we choose now will shape the lives of countless individuals and communities for generations to come. The implications of our decisions about resource management are not merely theoretical, they are a matter of survival and dignity for all. Imagine a world where contracts don't just sit in drawers, waiting for signatures, but instead spring to life, executing themselves without the need for human intervention. What would happen if every agreement made between parties could automatically enforce itself? This is the essence of smart contracts, a revolutionary technology that has the potential to reshape how we manage resources. These contracts operate on blockchain technology, a decentralized digital ledger that ensures transparency and security. When a condition is met, such as a payment being received, the contract executes the agreed-upon terms automatically. It's as if a digital handshake could seal the deal, ensuring that both parties uphold their end of the bargain without the risk of fraud or oversight. Think about a farmer who needs to access water resources. Instead of relying on a bureaucratic system that could be slow or corrupt, a smart contract could automatically release water rights once certain conditions are met, such as a verified payment. This not only streamlines the process but also instills a sense of trust between the farmer and the resource manager. Transparency is a key feature here. In a traditional contract, the details often remain hidden, leaving room for misunderstandings or manipulation. Smart contracts, however, operate in a transparent manner on the blockchain, where all parties can see the terms and the transaction history. This openness could deter corruption and favoritism, creating a level playing field for all stakeholders involved. But what would happen if we took this a step further? Suppose smart contracts were applied on a global scale, managing resources like water, energy, or food. Would they ensure equitable distribution, or could they inadvertently favor those with more access to technology? The strange consequence is that while these contracts promise efficiency, they also raise questions about who controls the technology and how it is governed. For instance, a community in a remote area might struggle to engage with a smart contract system designed with urban populations in mind. This disparity could lead to a new form of inequity, where those without the means to access digital tools are left behind. So we must ask ourselves, can technology truly level the playing field, or does it risk creating new divides? As we delve deeper into the mechanics of smart contracts, we must grapple with these complexities and consider the implications of entrusting resource management to automated systems. With the promise of self-execution and increased transparency, smart contracts could indeed revolutionize resource distribution, but only if we navigate the challenges they bring along with them. Imagine a village where every citizen has access to an app on their smartphone, that tracks the community's shared resources: water, food, energy, everything that sustains them. Each time a resource is used, the app updates in real time, displaying how much is left, who used what, and when. This isn't just a fantasy. This is the power of smart contracts in action, ensuring that transparency reigns over favoritism and inequity. But how does this actually work? Smart contracts are self-executing agreements coded into a blockchain, allowing transactions to occur automatically when certain conditions are met. Picture this. Every time a resident requests water, the system checks the available supply and automatically allocates a fair share based on usage history. No one can manipulate the system, and everyone can see the same data. This transparency prevents corruption. There's no room for someone to siphon off more than their fair share without everyone knowing. Now let's delve into a compelling case study from a small community that adopted this technology. In this village, they faced a crisis. A drought had reduced their water supply, leading to conflicts over access. They implemented a smart contract system to manage water distribution equitably. By using sensors to monitor water levels and consumption, the contract would automatically adjust allocations based on real-time data. The results were astounding. Not only did disputes diminish, but the community also began to trust the system more than any human authority. Each member felt secure, knowing the rules were clear and enforced without bias. But this raises an intriguing question. Is transparency enough? Can a system that seems flawless on the surface still harbor hidden inequalities? Suppose the technology is adopted on a larger scale, where decisions are made by algorithms rather than people. What happens if the data inputs are flawed or biased? Could a well-meaning system inadvertently favor certain groups over others due to historical data trends? As we navigate this landscape, we must consider the implications of such technology. The strange consequence is that while we strive for fairness through transparency, we might also need to ensure that the data driving these smart contracts is not only accurate, but also equitable. The stakes are high, and the balance between local needs and global standards becomes even more critical. If we can harness this technology wisely, we may find ourselves on the cusp of a new era in resource management, one where transparency is not just a goal, but a foundational principle. Imagine a small town nestled in a valley, surrounded by fertile fields, where the heartbeat of the community is agriculture. Here, farmers grow crops not just for profit, but for sustenance, for family, and for neighbors. Now, suppose this town decides to harness the power of smart contracts to manage its agricultural resources. What if every farmer could enter into agreements that automatically execute based on predefined conditions, like weather patterns, harvest yields, or community needs? The promise of technology is tantalizing. With these self-executing contracts, farmers could share water rights, distribute crop yields more equitably, and even ensure that no one hoards resources at the expense of others. But what challenges might arise in this local application of smart contracts? First, consider community governance. Smart contracts thrive on clear, transparent rules, but every community has its own unique dynamics, traditions, and needs. A one-size-fits-all approach could overlook the nuances that define local relationships. If a smart contract is programmed with rigid parameters, perhaps allocating water based solely on land size, what happens to the small farmer who can't compete with larger landholders? The strange consequence is that while technology aims to level the playing field, it could unintentionally reinforce existing inequalities if not tailored to local contexts. Now imagine the farmers gathering in the town square, discussing how to adapt these contracts to reflect their individual circumstances. One farmer suggests a system where water allocation adjusts according to crop type and season, rather than land size alone. Another proposes a community vote to decide on shared resources, ensuring everyone has a voice in the decision-making process. This adaptation to local needs is essential. It transforms smart contracts from mere tools into instruments of community empowerment. But the road isn't entirely smooth. Who decides the rules for these contracts, and how can the town ensure that everyone adheres to them? There's a risk that without oversight, some individuals might exploit the system, creating new forms of inequity. This brings us to the question of trust. If trust erodes, the very foundation of community governance falters, and the potential benefits of smart contracts could dissolve. As you ponder this scenario, what becomes clear is that the application of smart contracts at a local level is not just about technology. It's about people. It's about understanding the intricate web of relationships that make up a community. Could a small town thrive by managing its resources through technology? The answer lies in the balance between innovation and tradition, between the promise of efficiency and the need for inclusivity. We glimpse the profound implications of how we choose to govern our resources, revealing that technology alone cannot dictate outcomes. Human values and local adaptations must guide the way. Imagine a small coastal community where the livelihood of families hinges on fishing. The ocean provides not just sustenance, but also a sense of identity. Now, suppose a global smart contract is introduced to govern fishing quotas, designed to ensure sustainability and fairness across nations. On the surface, it seems like a logical step toward preserving marine resources. However, what happens when this one-size-fits-all solution collides with the unique realities of local fishermen? The global framework may dictate a universal catch limit, but it does not account for seasonal variations, the historical fishing practices of the community, or the socioeconomic dependencies tied to their cultural heritage. While the intent is to create an equitable system, the strange consequence is that local fishermen may find themselves unable to meet their needs, trapped by rules that don't recognize their specific circumstances. Consider the fisherman's dilemma. The global contract might impose a limit of 10 fish per day, regardless of the season's bounty. In a year of plentiful catches, the community could thrive, but in lean seasons that same limit could spell disaster. The community's ability to adapt is stifled, and the global standard becomes a rigid barrier rather than a helpful guideline. This tension between uniformity and local specificity raises critical questions. Who benefits from these global standards? Does the community's voice have a place in shaping regulations that directly impact their lives? The risks of applying global smart contracts without local input are profound. The framework might inadvertently privilege larger, more industrial fishing operations that can afford to adapt to the new rules, leaving the small local fishermen at a disadvantage. The very systems designed to protect resources could end up exacerbating inequalities, as the wealthier entities find ways to exploit loopholes or gain exceptions, while local communities struggle to survive. As we examine these challenges, it's essential to recognize the potential pitfalls of uniformity. While global governance frameworks aim to create equity, they often fail to address the nuanced realities of diverse communities. Imagine a scenario where a local fishermen's cooperative, with its deep knowledge of sustainable practices, is sidelined in favor of a universal policy that doesn't consider the ecological balance of their specific waters. The cooperative, once a steward of the ocean, could find itself marginalized, unable to implement practices that have been honed over generations. What then becomes of local resource management? The answer lies in finding a balance, a way to weave global standards with local needs. What if smart contracts could be designed with built-in flexibility, allowing for adaptations based on local conditions? Could they incorporate community input to reflect the unique contexts of different regions? In this exploration, we begin to see that the path forward may not be about choosing between global and local, but rather about harmonizing the two. As we navigate these complexities, we must ask ourselves, what changes if we take seriously the premise that local realities should shape the standards we impose? Who stands to gain, and who risks losing in this intricate dance of governance and resource management? Imagine a bustling marketplace, vibrant with life, where vendors display their goods. Fresh produce, handcrafted goods, and local delicacies. Now picture that this marketplace operates on a smart contract system designed to ensure fair distribution of resources. At first glance, it appears to be the perfect solution to inequality. Everyone has access to what they need, and transactions happen seamlessly. But what if, beneath this shiny surface, the very technology meant to liberate us begins to entrap us? What would happen if resource hoarding emerged as a byproduct of this well-intentioned system? Let's delve into a hypothetical scenario. Suppose a wealthy individual in this marketplace discovers a loophole in the smart contract governing resource distribution. With a few clever maneuvers, they begin to exploit the system, purchasing large quantities of essential goods before they can be fairly distributed to the community. What started as a mechanism for equitable access inadvertently morphs into a tool for consolidation of power and wealth. The strange consequence is that while the technology was designed for fairness, it now creates a new layer of inequality, where the rich can manipulate the system to their advantage. This raises an essential question. Could smart contracts, in their quest for efficiency and transparency, overlook the nuances of human behavior? The potential for exploitation is a stark reality that we must confront. Without adequate oversight and a framework that allows for adaptability, these contracts may become rigid, unable to respond to the complexities of real-world interactions. Imagine a community that, instead of thriving, begins to fracture as individuals compete for resources that are increasingly hoarded by a few. The need for oversight becomes evident. While technology can streamline processes and reduce bureaucratic inefficiencies, it can also create unintentional barriers. If we don't account for the human element, our tendency to exploit systems, our desire for control, then what we perceive as progress may lead us down a path of new disparities. The question to ponder is, how do we design these smart contracts to be resilient against such manipulation? This thought experiment invites us to reflect on the delicate balance between innovation and ethical governance. What safeguards can we implement to ensure that smart contracts do not become instruments of inequality? As we explore the promise of these technologies, we must remain vigilant, asking ourselves who truly benefits from these systems and at what cost. In this intricate dance of technology and human behavior, we must navigate the potential pitfalls, ensuring that our solutions do not inadvertently sow the seeds of a new kind of inequality. What if technology could finally level the playing field for all? Imagine a future where every community, regardless of size or location, has the power to manage its resources equitably through smart contracts. In this envisioned world, these digital agreements, self-executing contracts with the terms of the agreement directly written into code, don't just facilitate transactions, they redefine the very fabric of resource distribution. Picture a small village in a developing country where access to clean water has always been a struggle. Now envision a smart contract that automatically allocates water resources based on real-time data, ensuring that every household receives its fair share, regardless of economic status. The result? No more inequitable access, no more favoritism, just a community thriving together. But let's stretch our imaginations further. Suppose that these smart contracts are not confined to local contexts. What if they could interconnect communities across borders? A network of smart contracts could link farmers in Africa with consumers in Europe, ensuring that surplus crops are fairly traded and efficiently distributed. The strange consequence is that through technology, we could create a global marketplace where resources are managed not by corporations, but by the very communities that produce them. This could disrupt traditional power dynamics and empower local voices, fostering a sense of ownership and responsibility. Yet, as we envision this equitable future, we must also consider the role of community engagement. The implementation of smart contracts can only succeed if the communities involved are active participants in the process. Imagine community forums where individuals come together to discuss their needs, share insights, and collectively decide how resources should be managed. This participatory approach not only builds trust, but also ensures that the smart contracts reflect the unique needs of each community, rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all solution. So, what changes if we take these premises seriously? We begin to see a future where resource management is no longer a top-down approach dictated by external entities, but rather a collaborative effort driven by local knowledge and global connectivity. The balance between local needs and global standards shifts, creating a tapestry of diverse solutions that honor each community's context. In this future, technology is not just a tool, it is a bridge to a more just society, where equity is not an aspiration, but a reality built on transparency and shared governance. As we reflect on these possibilities, we invite you to ponder, how can we harness the power of smart contracts to not only manage resources, but to transform our world into a more equitable place for all?